Welcome to This Explainer. We're diving straight into a really complex, absolutely fascinating transitional period in India's independence movement. We are talking about the 1920s. You see, when the massive non-cooperation movement was abruptly suspended in 1922, it left behind this profound political vacuum. But the push for independence didn't just die out. Instead, it kind of fractured, evolving into several parallel, highly dynamic strategies that forever changed the trajectory of the movement.
To make sense of how this movement branched out, we're going to trace 5 key paths: the initial Great Split, the strategy of fighting inside the system, the mobilization of grassroots and new ideologies, the armed resurgence, and finally, the fierce rebellion in Bengal.
All right, let's start with Section 1, the Great Split between the Swarajists and the No-Changers.
Picture this. It's 1922, and Indian nationalists are facing a stark binary choice. On one side, you had the Swarajists. These guys were led by heavyweights like C.R. Das and Motilal Nehru. Their strategy, they wanted to actually enter the government assemblies to expose their weaknesses. They basically wanted to end or mend the system from the inside out. Now, on the exact opposite side were the No-Changers, led by figures like C. Rajagopalachari and Vallabhbhai Patel. They completely opposed entering the councils. For them, it was all about maintaining the boycott and focusing entirely on quiet grassroots preparation.
Now, this clash could have been an absolute disaster for the movement. Initially, the Swarajist proposal was totally voted down at the Gaya Congress session in late 1922, which led Das and Nehru to just form their own Swaraj Party. But nobody wanted a permanent, catastrophic split like they'd seen back in 1907. So a compromise was hammered out in Delhi in 1923, allowing the Swarajists to contest elections as a group within the Congress. And then, by 1924 at the Belgaum session, which, fun fact, was the only Congress session ever presided over by Mahatma Gandhi, this agreement was officially endorsed. They essentially agreed to disagree, but stay united.
Moving on to Section 2, Inside the System, focusing on the Swarajist political strategy.
42. That is a crucial number. In the November 1923 elections, the newly formed Swarajists managed to win 42 out of the 141 elected seats in the Central Legislative Assembly. Plus, they grabbed a clear majority in the central provinces. I mean, this was a tremendous initial validation of their strategy to take the fight directly to the ballot box.
And they didn't just win seats, they made waves. They got Vallabhbhai Patel elected as Speaker in 1925, and in 1928, they successfully defeated the Public Safety Bill, which was a highly controversial law aimed at deporting foreign activists. They were filling that massive political vacuum. But it didn't last. Widespread communal riots started dividing the politicians. The Swarajists themselves actually fractured into factions. You had the responsivists, who wanted to cooperate with the government, going up against the non-responsivists. Add to that the tragic death of their leader, C.R. Das, in 1925, and the party really began to unravel. Finally, in 1930, following the Lahore Resolution demanding Purna Swaj or complete independence, they walked out of the legislatures for good.
Which brings us to Section 3, the grassroots and new ideologies, where the focus shifts to mobilizing the masses.
Because while politicians were battling it out inside the colonial councils, an absolute explosion of new ideas was happening on the ground. It wasn't a monolith, it was a highly diverse awakening. You had Marxist ideals taking root with the Communist Party of India forming in 1920, eventually leading to the infamous Meerut conspiracy trial in 1929. Trade unionism was on the rise too, spearheaded by the AITUC with Lala Lajpat Rai as its very first president. Peasants were actively agitating for lower rents, like the brilliant Bardoli Satyagraha of 1928 led by Vallabhbhai Patel. And you had these powerful caste movements pushing hard for social equality, like the Justice Party and the self-respect movement under Periyar in Madras. The youth, workers, peasants, they were finally finding their political voice.
And underpinning so much of this was what the No-Changers called constructive work. This was their quiet, relentless preparation. They were out there building ashrams, pushing for the use of hand-spun khadi cloth, setting up national schools that were completely free from colonial ideology, and aggressively campaigning for Hindu-Muslim unity and the removal of untouchability. Sure, it wasn't flashy, but this grassroots organizing fundamentally connected the national movement directly to the everyday masses.
Next up, Section 4, the armed resurgence, specifically the revolution brewing in North India.
Now, there was a faction of younger activists who were profoundly dissatisfied with the strategy of nonviolence. It really kicked off with the Hindustan Republican Association, or HRA. In August 1925, they pulled off the audacious Kakori train robbery to fund their operations. But a severe government crackdown led to arrests and hangings. Determined to bounce back, the youth reorganized. In September 1928, meeting at the ruins of Firuzshah Kotla in Delhi, they formed the HSRA, the Hindustan Socialist Republican Association, led by Chandrasekhar Azad. From there, things escalated unbelievably fast. Following the death of Lala Lajpat Rai from a police lofty charge, revolutionaries Bhagat Singh, Azad, and Rajguru assassinated the police official responsible, Saunders, in December 1928. Months later, they bombed the Central Legislative Assembly, which ultimately culminated in the tragic executions of Bhagat Singh, Sukhdev, and Rajguru in March 1931. But it's absolutely vital to understand that this wasn't just unthinking violence, it was deeply ideological. Books like Sachin Sanyal's Bandi Jivan and Bhagwati Charan Vora's famous The Philosophy of the Bomb became the intellectual bedrock for this entire generation. The HSRA had officially adopted socialism as their goal. They were dreaming of a federal republic of the United States of India, built on adult franchise.
To make the death here. That was the powerful rationale given by Bhagat Singh and Batukeshwar Dutt when they threw those bombs into the Central Legislative Assembly in April 1929. The bombs were deliberately designed to be harmless. Their goal wasn't to kill anyone, it was a loud, unavoidable protest against draconian new laws. They wanted to force both the colonial government and the public to finally pay attention.
64 days. Try to wrap your head around that level of dedication. When arrested, these young revolutionaries didn't just stop fighting, they demanded to be treated honorably as political prisoners. Revolutionary Jatin Das actually went on a hunger strike in jail, and on the 64th day of his fast, he passed away. He became a massive, undeniable martyr for the cause.
Finally, we arrive at Section 5, Rebellion in Bengal, highlighting the Chittagong Armoury raid.
While the North was boiling over, a second, equally fierce strand of revolutionary activity was confronting the British Empire in the East. In April 1930, leader Surya Sen organized a group called the Indian Republican Army Chittagong Branch. His objective was clear: prove that the armed might of the British Empire could actually be challenged. With just 65 activists, they raided and occupied two main armories in Chittagong. They systematically destroyed the telephone, telegraph, and railway links, completely cutting the city off. And then they hoisted the national flag and boldly proclaimed a provisional revolutionary government. It was an astonishingly successful raid that absolutely fired the imagination of the youth all across Bengal.
But what truly stands out here, what's so fascinating about the Bengal revolutionary movement, is the fierce frontline participation of highly dedicated women. This was not just a boys' club. Preeti Lata Wadadar died while actively conducting a raid. Kalpana Dutt was tried right alongside Surya Sen and given a life sentence. In December 1931, Santi Ghosh and Suniti Chanderi, who were literally just schoolgirls, shot dead the local district magistrate. And in 1932, Bina Das fired point-blank at the governor while she was receiving her degree at her convocation. The sheer level of commitment across demographics was staggering.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. You had Swarajists disrupting the government in suits from the inside. You had no-changers patiently mobilizing peasants in rural ashrams. And you had revolutionaries directly challenging the empire's armed might with bombs and raids. None of them agreed on the exact method. But how did all these radically different parallel paths ultimately fuse together? Because at the end of the day, together they created a combined, multi-front pressure that the British Empire simply could no longer ignore. They set the absolute, unbreakable foundation for the final push toward complete independence. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking questions, and I'll see you next time.